Well, good morning. Overslept. Oh, there he is. There's our beautiful man.
Hey.
Hey, Matthew. So I was just saying, I overslept. Right up until the minute before my emergency alarm. I woke up and I was like, "Oh man, I should go to the bathroom." And then I looked down and I was like, "No fucking way."
Well, I've got a hard out at 11 anyway, so it's up to you how long you want to go, how hard you want
Yeah,
to hit it. You
yeah.
seem, you seem
Um,
like you're not quite in the day yet, which is fine.
no, that's fine. Yeah, I've been awake for like 20 minutes. And then I rushed downstairs and fell on the stairs, which was awesome.
Oh no.
Um, yeah, I was just discombobulated a little bit. So, um, and then yeah, like it looks like you it's just gonna be me. I was like, oh,
Yes.
I can't miss this. It has to happen because some people were super like down for this, and then now they're got other commitments. So I was like, oh shit. Um, so yeah, I kind of quickly made a list of like what I wanted to talk about because I was so discombobulated. I was like not sure what to talk about. So I want to do this birthright reskin project.
Okay.
Um, but I think I want to do it as a group. Um, like have a couple people on, and then um, I'm gonna put
So what's birthright?
birthright is old second edition thing where
Oh, that's right. I remember you talking about this
yeah, it was like
with the
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 Highlander s stuff. It's
yeah,
very like it's kind of I wouldn't say it's low fantasy, but it's more like there's a lot to do with like
yeah.
your characters that like adventure once a year.
Yes, I do remember this now.
Okay. Yeah. So the whole thing is like there's not very many fantasy races.
Hmm.
Um but like it's a lot of like here's a bunch of allegories for actual groups, you know, like the Brecht, Kanasi, the Rudrick, which are I think like the Vikings. Um, so I kind of want to go in and spice that up a little bit because I mean I'm kind of over having a bunch of human.
Yeah.
I think it's
And I mean, as fraught as it can be, saying this, mythical race corresponds to this real world ethnicity or region or whatever, it's, I think it's harder even when it's like, we're just gonna map a bunch of fictional countries onto real world thing.
yeah. I think the other thing is I'd want to build a map too. The only thing that's like for me that's nailed in stone is that the gods had a big fight. They showed up on the planet side, had a big fight. They all died, and their blood spilt everywhere. And that's where we get our lineages of like rulership as people who got bathed in like the blood of the gods and now are like special boys.
Yeah.
So I like the idea though of like saying that the countries are one thing they used to do in D&D that I really liked. And I think it's just because it made it kind of easy in my brain to visualize was
Hmm.
they used to give you like a breakdown, like rough like approximation of like the races in a country or in a land. Like, hey, this land is like 60% orc and it's like 20% human. And it's so you can go, oh, okay. So it's not like this is a country that's just all orcs. It's a country that, it's like, but it's primarily like
Primarily,
that's the,
yeah.
and I like the idea of like maybe doing something like that of like, okay, well, who lives there and who is the primary, majority, which doesn't mean, they're a voting block or anything like that, but it just means like this is who lives there.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of like um utilize the old who lives there percentage system. Redraw the map. Replace the majority of humans with other fantasy races. But I do want to keep it like no tech. I mean, this is no sci-fi. This is straight up like fantasy. Keep it straight up. Keep it up. Keep it straight up. Fantasy. Keep the tone and rules just change the. Man, my brain doesn't want to work today. Just make the rest our own. Okay. So yeah, I'd like to like. Yeah, this is like these are the Saxons, and they're like very nature oriented, and you know they have their own kings, they have jarls, that type of shit. Or like, well, you could keep a lot of that. Well, let's just figure out what's something else that works better for it.
Right.
And so again, it says in a historical context, the Uruk are an amalgamation of the Nordic Vikings and the mythic Celts, or Celts, excuse me. So yeah, that's kind of something I want to do. Because I'd like to do like periodically, just do like seasons of this, like do like a Oh, Matthew, are you all right?
Oh yeah, no, just a bit of a dry cough.
Do like gosh, my brain today. Do like a do one thing that's like your kingdom, all your kingdom stuff, and then do the second part is your adventure, and then the third part is your kingdom upkeep. So then, like the next time you come back, it's like okay, well, we're just starting the adventure, then the upkeep. But like do it occasionally.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's that. The next thing, was a question I was asking myself, but I decided to put it down here. Am I ever going to run Hellboy? I need to read the rules. I've done a really bad job of just like sitting down and reading the rules.
I mean,
Completely.
it's enjoyable. So
I get like halfway through, and I'm just like I lose focus on it.
Yeah, it's hard when you're just trying to like absorb all of that.
Yeah, I need to just like, and I do such a bad job now with the way my brain functions. With if you tell me or you give me instructions, I can't. I like will read it and I'll read it and I'll read it and I think I've got it, and then I have to apply it. I'm like lost. So I have to do things like repetitively, like 5 or 6 times before I can get like a rudimentary grasp of it. It's really frustrating.
It's a tough thing to. I mean,
I got
even with a brain that is relatively unimpeded. I'm in the same boat because it's just like, well, yeah, this is just it's dense. It's a lot to absorb and process and actually do anything useful with.
Yeah. I mean, that's I don't know. It sucks. I got to just sit down and do it though, because it's not like terribly different than fifth edition. There's just extra stuff and changes. I'm also starting to think like this might be a good one to do like one shots with, because I don't think, the more I think about it, it's investigation is not like something D&D is super. It's built for it, but it's like I don't think it's going to be like something that people are like, I want to do all this investigating. They're going to be like, I want to arrive and punch stuff,
Right.
which is fine too.
No, sure.
It kind of plays into like, I don't know how much you'll tolerate like online discourse. You seem to have a much better handle on like just pushing away when you're like, yep, fuck you guys. But like I watched a bunch of people doing reactions to the Hellboy trailer, and I found one common thread.
Okay.
People who were like, well, this looks terrible, would also in the next 5 minutes say, well, but I haven't read any of those. And it's like, and some of those were comic channels.
Yeah, I don't.
And I was like, how can you say that? Like, you're a fucking channel that reviews comics, and then go on and do a reaction of a video and go, yeah, it looks like they're trying to do something that's very horror. And they're doing something in the Appalachians. I think it's because the Appalachians are, they're kind of a hot property now. And I just want to scream and go, it's a fucking ode to Manly Wade Wellman, you stupid pricks. Because I would see other channels who would know that stuff and go, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
This is Mignola's ode to Manly Wade Wellman back in the day, who wrote these Silver John stories. And this story is, has a Silver John analog. And it's because there were some people too who were just like, well, the Crooked Man, isn't that like a European folklore thing? And it was just like, I don't know, is it? You're fucking the one talking about it on a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
With fucking research, you stupid assholes. How long does it take to fucking read the Wikipedia of the Hellboy, the Crooked Man, you dumb fucks?
Well, if you want to be the first one to have your video out, and
it makes me so angry. But one thing that dumb people were saying, but yet smart people were saying as well, was like, this has much more of a horror tone.
Yeah.
And a couple people pointed out, they're like, I think that's the thing people kind of forget. Hellboy is about 50% a punching comic and 50% a horror comic.
Yeah,
in the movies,
he's a horror.
Yeah, in the movies, we've gotten like 80% punching and 20% horror. So he's like, because I think that they were not confident they could get movies made without punching, without the superhero-y stuff. And this has kind of got the vibe of like, well, we don't have the budget anymore. We probably don't have studio support anymore, but we want to do something that's very, very close to the source material. It's written by Golden and Mignola.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that pissed me off. People would be like, well, oh, hey, I just turned my screen off, I guess. Well, they were like, well, maybe just Mike Mignola doesn't know how to write this. And someone who was talking about it was like, all the people who say that need to remember this is the person who literally wrote like 90% of the fucking Hellboy stories.
Yeah, and
stop talking.
And the stuff that he didn't write, Golden did. Like, and now, granted, writing for comics is not the same as writing for movies, but
it's not like Mignola hasn't worked in film before.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's the type of guy who wrote something was like, nope, this is it. No rewrites, no edits.
No.
Yeah, anyway. I think that's the thing I'm kind of struggling with is tone. Because I think I want it to be more horror in tone.
Okay. I don't think that's a you know, I mean, it's a horror comic. That's, I mean, it's you can see, you know, that very like golden age sort of occultic, you know, bent to the conception of the stories. You know, that was before the comics code and before, you know, everything got so rigidly defined. Reading some of that golden age stuff, it's like, goddamn. You know, it's just like, yeah, here's a dude who's just, you know, a guy in tights, and all of a sudden a bunch of fucking ghouls come out of the ground in Kentucky or whatever and start kidnapping women and whatever, and he's got to go kill them.
Yeah, I think that's the thing too. Is since the game is you're not playing Hellboy,
Yeah,
you're the agents. Now, granted, you can make characters who are, you know, psychics. You can make characters who are, you know, you can make undead characters. You can make, um, you know, what is it? You can be a different form of like, you can be an Abe Sapien, you know,
type of, yeah,
type of, you know, special agent. But that is not the requirement either. You could just be a guy. Which is one thing I love about BPRD, especially
yeah,
reading things like Plague of Frogs, was like, oh fuck, people are dying left and right. Um, you know, I can't think of the character's name who gets the sword of Hyboria. That's a perfect example. You know, that there's more than a couple times in Hell on Earth where he goes in with a bunch of people and nobody survives except for him,
yep,
which has got a very Conan tone to it as well. You
yeah,
know, you read a lot of those old Conan stories. It's Conan rolls in, becomes leader, gets a bunch of guys, and then rolls in to fight something else, and then everybody dies except for Conan, who just kind of marches off to the next adventure.
yep. And goes off to get some wine and some women and
Wine, some women, and to the next loot drop.
there was Kieran Gillen, who I know you're aware of,
Yeah, Kieran Gillen's
like
great.
was like, oh, there should totally be like a Conan game where you like try to pick up something that looks like a crafting item, you know, like herbs or whatever, and he'll just say, no, I don't need that.
Yeah, no, that does not
Or
sound
what the
yeah,
hell would I do with
especially.
that?
Or my favorite would be anything magic. He's like,
Yeah,
no, no. I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, if you're being, you know, if you're following like the tone, tenor, and direction of Howard.
yeah.
If you're not, I mean, you know, and if you don't want that style of Conan, there's other writers. I think what is it? Richard
Other
Wagner.
characters too. I
Yeah,
mean,
Richard Wagner's. I can't think of his character's name. Who's basically like Conan, but it's like I'm cool with magic, baby. And it's also a lot less moral than Conan. I mean, fucking, you know, to a degree, I do think Elric of Melibun, I can never say it correctly. I think Elric is basically anti-Conan. He's, you know, weak and he's a weak soft boy who does magic, but he also has a sword that, you know, wants to kill everything and eat its soul. Um, you know, it's, you know, all those Eternal Champion characters that Moorcock came up with are kind of interesting in my opinion. Um, so anyway, I'm thinking like doing something like this might make me. I feel like this is the thing. It's like with a lot of stuff. It's I have, except for games I'm comfortable running. It's I have good idea, follow through poor, get stuck, rules.
yeah,
Um, so also read Something is Killing the Children, trade paperback one, like in 10 minutes. Um, really fun, and I like the idea of there being other organizations outside of um, the BPRD operating at different times.
yeah.
Um, so if anyone's read the Laundry Files, which is a um, more comedic take on like as much as you can be comedy about these things, a more comedic take on like Delta Green by Charles Strauss. Charles Strauss, who also incidentally is the person who gave us the Githyanki. Um, so he wrote for the Fiend Folio back in the day when that book was just a British supplement. Um, but one of the things I like is like the American group is awful. Their American counterpart, I mean, they're basically the equivalent of espionage organizations. They're fucking scary. Like they're just scary. And I love the idea of like the BPRD having, depending on the time frame, you know, there being like, what is it? This is the Brotherhood of the Heliocentric something. We see these little groups pop up in Hellboy occasionally, which some of them actually were real organizations in our history, which is terrifying. But some of them also are things like there's some Lovecraft had some things like that where it was like these little groups of like fine gentlemen who would get together, but the whole premise underneath it all was they were up to some no good shit. I like the idea of like early on in a timeline, and the other thing I love about Hellboy is we can jump around. Like
jump
fucking,
up and get down.
God damn it, you beat me to it. But I like the idea of like the further you go to the more modern era, that some of these things might have actually become part of the government, or at least they are contracted by the government. Yeah. And that the BPRD has to deal with that. I mean, both on a level of like funding, but also like other like the Rogue Team.
Well, they had a little bit of that with the I mean, and it parallels now, unfortunately, in the early Hellboy stuff with Zinco.
Yeah, and I think Zinco is a perfect example of that.
And now we've got, you know, fucking Elon responsible for so much of our, you know, space infrastructure, which seems like a bad idea. But
also, like, you don't have to go out of the country now to say like, oh, the Nazis are launching a fucking rocket into space. We have actual Nazis here in the United States launching rockets into space.
Yeah, that we're paying them to do.
So yeah, I like the idea of doing some of that. So it's got to, some of it's like I wanted to start some of this stuff in the past.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking like maybe doing the first adventure, like the first one shot is like set in well, I'm modified now. Like but like pre, you know, when shit hits the fan in the Hellboy timeline, like right before it. Which I can't remember what year that is.
Well, and that's, I mean, I started into the, you know, I was reading BPRD into the beginning of Plague of Frogs, and then I was buying too much stuff and it got the chop. So that's about where I left.
Yeah, it gets worse.
Yeah, no,
or worse. I mean, the world ends. It's all you gotta know. Yeah, at the end of Hell on Earth, like you want me to spoil it for you?
No, I mean, I did the Humble Bundle. Okay. So I will.
The world ends, Matt, but there's a great last like page or so showing like when one world ends, another world starts type of thing, which is very interesting. Especially, I will say, make sure you read Sword of Hyboria. It's just a one shot. Okay. Because it kind of it ties a lot of things together. Where you're like, oh, okay, that's what that is. Especially since the Sword of Hyboria does appear in Hollow Earth.
Oh.
So it's been a thing for a while. It's just something that Mignola had boiling in the background, just simmering, baby.
I mean, that's the way to do it.
So, Something is Killing the Children. Have you read this?
I have not. I've heard good things, but I have not watched it.
So the premise is something is killing the children. It's right on the tin. And then this person shows up who's obviously connected to some organization, starts researching these things, also is like maybe 21 aged girl. And she's like, oh, I'm going to kill this fucking thing. And she figures out like she knows what it is. She also has like a fetish, like a like a Zuni fetish type thing, not like a fetish thing. She might, but they don't get into that.
Right.
But it's like holding some type of spirit monster in it. Because at one point she's consulting it, and then she realizes later on the fucking thing lied to her. But find monster, kill monster, monster very tough, monster not be seen by anything other than children, because it basically is like, she explains it like your brain is, unless you have like other things going on, your brain now is not able to comprehend this. But kids had just enough to like to be scared, and their brains, can feel this thing. Also, it's a fact like when she shows up, one of the victim's siblings calls the cops. The cops arrest her, and she just tells like the sheriff, like, "You're gonna let me out of here." She asks a bunch of questions to him, and he's like, "I'm not the one being fucking interrogated." He's like, "Well, I haven't done anything, first of all, but you are gonna let me out of here, and if you don't, here pretty soon you're gonna get a phone call, and that phone call is going to ensure you let me out of here and let me do my thing." So it's a very overarching something going on in the background. And it ends like, oh, monster dead, must be over, and then you realize, oh, not over at all, even worse. But I like the idea of, again, like hunter killer squads. Like maybe the BPRD again does not have this, where it's just like someone is pulling off of they're hijacking their information stream and then just sending out these groups of just like straight up, we don't expect you to come back, suicide squads after something terrible. I can't think of what there was something I was thinking of. I can't remember what the media is, where like they show up, like they end up coinciding with the characters, and like they catch them as like they're burning everything, and they're like, hey, we need this for research. Like we know that we've established like we work on parallel paths, and they're like, no, you didn't, because nothing happened here. Just go back and do what you guys do, and that's fine, and we'll keep doing what we're doing. Basically, they're kind of the illusion of like, you're the scalpel and we're the hammer.
Yeah.
You guys do all that stuff. It's great. Thank you. Thank you for the intel. And it kind of gets a little heated, and then like the main characters see like them throwing just black bags of corpses onto a truck of all these people on this team that just got obliterated, and they just decide like, okay, this is not the time nor place to have this conversation. I kind of like that as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So anyway, I want to kind of take a little bit from that. The biggest thing I think I was struggling with, I'm glad we had this conversation, was just the tone. Because I worry that certain people will be like, well, I don't want to play if it's horror. And I'm like, well, but that's the whole point.
Well, and I mean, that's their call to make.
Yeah. All right, moving down my list. Plangea. I'm very pumped about Plangea. Again, I got to read the book. It's a big book. Again, it's 5e, but it's like 5e is like Hellboy. It's like the backbone, but then everything else is different. Although I do very much love the I listened to they have a pod. Oh, Jesus Christ, I hate this. They have a podcast that they do. The people who made the game, and it is very like informative to the game, as far as like, it was a homebrew game that ended up being like a Kickstarter, which ended up now all this other shit. So they're like on the podcast at different points, because I'm starting from the beginning, they're still working some shit out. There's like 6 people on there, and they're just kind of trying to figure out what's going on, or how they want to do certain things, which I really enjoy, like hearing that process. It's kind of like this sometimes, except for they're actually making money. So I gotta read the rules. I have the digital, as well as I bought an actual physical copy of the fucking tome. So I think I want to one shot first, because again, I have to kind of figure out, because they were also debating, they were talking tone, and they were talking about how, like, it can be a little bit that you can have a little bit of room for changes in tone.
Yeah.
But they're like, ostensibly, like, this is also sort of a horror setting. You're the very beginning of, like, these different races, and you're small. Like, everything else big, you small. Because, like, the only civilizations are the giants, who will take you for labor or for whatever. Like, I know one of them was like, because they're like, yeah, we're staying away from the slave word. We're just going to say, forced labor. But they were like, they may take you not for labor. They may take you because they look at you and say, oh, pretty. And then stick you underneath a glass jar so they can show you off to the other giants. And there's like 4 giant kingdoms. And then the humans, the small races, wasn't just humans, that actually took over, like, one of the big giant areas. And that's the only actual, like, permanent residence. Like, it's because the whole thing about it is, like, one of the things I liked about it was, like, there are no towns. Like, everybody's on the move constantly. You're all kind of migratory.
Right.
So the clan fire is your towns. It's the fires that your moving hordes drop at night to keep shit away and tell stories around and all that. And I like the black taboos, the idea that there's no writing. Writing is like and it's not that not just that there isn't. It's like, if you start to do these things, I kind of think of them, and I don't think that's right, but they're like kind of like the Hounds of Tindalos a little bit. Just show up, and they're like, just, they will fucking take you out. No number over 9, no writing, no wheels. So, like, no math. So, like, something I didn't realize is, like, so the spell scribe wizards, I think it's spell scribe, the wizards who put their spells on their skin.
Oh, right.
They just kind of become pariahs. And they learn their spells from magic caves that they seek out that do have writing on the walls. So that's how they find these, and then they put them onto their skin. And I like that kind of idea. I also like the idea, like, the druids are hated by the gods, and the gods aren't really gods. They're like things that are sort of primordial. Like, the big gods they talk about there is a gorilla that tribes have formed around. There's a gorilla god, which is like this massive formed gorilla. There's a bear and a lion. It's like called the clan of brothers or whatever. And they each like they were talking about the bear clan for like a whole 2 hours, and they were like, bear clan, they're all about, like, strength and overindulgence and songs and, like, laughter and all of this. Also take forced labor, because their attitude is like, oh, well, if you're not strong enough, then I mean, that's just how it is. That's the thing. One thing they were like, yeah, we didn't want any of these things to be clean. Anything can be a villain in this story that you're telling. And I liked that idea a lot as well. And they were also like, much like we were just talking about, there is no, like, omnipresent, like, everyone in the bear clan. It's like this.
Right.
They were like, it's just like any religion. There's offshoots and subsects and things like that. I really liked that idea. And in fact, they were like, and there's like tiers of these deities, like the bear and the lion and the ape like have broader scopes of areas,
Okay.
but they're like, there might be a god in that valley over there. And they just ruled over that valley. There might be a god of a stream, just that stream, because that's all. And they were kind of like, if you think about it in overall, like, because one of the things that one of the people asked was like, well, if I'm the ape, if I'm the, I can't even think of their names. If I'm the ape god, why would I tolerate these other gods in my area? Because gods are stationary.
Oh.
They don't get to move around. They have an area they control, and that's it. So you can take your god with you, which might offend other gods whose lands you walk in. But your gods don't get up and go. They're like, why would the ape god tolerate like all these minor gods? And as one of them pointed out, well, gods get more powerful, right? They eat other gods. So maybe they're fattening them up, or maybe like it's a symbiotic relationship, as one of them pointed out. Maybe they are not interested in controlling all this other stuff. It bores them. So they have like a vassal god basically who does that.
Yeah, or it's just like, yeah, do your thing. If you piss me off, I'll deal with you, but
I'll eat you. And I'll be bigger god.
Yeah, but up until then, whatever. Yeah, do your shit.
I really like that idea too.
For whatever reason, and it doesn't sound like it's
Hey,
necessarily
Super Spike, I'm trying.
germane to this, but I was reading it reminded me of the Maximortal comics that Rick Veitch has done, and there it's like this alien like thing, like this primordial force, and it like lands on Earth or interacts with Earth, and the first person it interacts with is basically uh, a kind of analog of Siegel and Schuster.
Oh,
So he
nice.
basically, based on that and shaped by people's perceptions, becomes a Superman sort of.
So that's one thing they talk about too. Is like, I can't think there's a word for it. That if enough people believe in a concept, that concept becomes a reality.
Yeah, and
I don't think it's a psychopomp.
There was actually just a bit with that in the Doctor Strange comic too, because there's this whole situation. I don't want to spoil it because I know I've lent it to you and you've enjoyed it, but it's basically like, well, the ancient humans were so afraid of these like cats or creatures or whatever, that their fear basically generated like the tiger god that Ewing is used and stuff, and is the force kind of behind the White Tiger's powers and stuff like that. But it ends up in the story that they're like, well, is there like a protective force, like a dog god?
Yeah.
And so they have to like, reach out and, find and appeal to this dog god to like solve a problem. And it's actually pretty interesting. But the idea of, like, yeah, everybody is just so afraid of this thing that fear created a god.
Interesting. Which is kind of one of the things they talk about, like that's what it is. If enough people believe in it, maybe it's solipsism. I can't remember if that's the right word. I don't know. Anyway, it's a concept, and I've seen it in a couple like books, and I know that like I think Morrison's used it before.
Oh, of course.
But I like the idea of that being a part of it as well, because that's what they were saying, on that podcast, was like, enough people believing in something gives it enough power to basically be like, it's a thing now. So I've done that before in D&D as well, where it's like, hey, if you can gather enough people to believe in you as a deity, you start to become a deity. If enough people start to believe that you can grant them abilities, whether you're doing it by hook or by crook, eventually you start to be able to grant them abilities. I like the idea that like druids are these deities hate druids. Because druids are taking magical power from the actual world, which they don't like because it's taking power from them in a roundabout way, but also it's because it's not getting power from them. You're not getting granted power from them. They don't like that.
Yeah, they want to be they want to control that flow.
Yeah, you're starting to get power in a way they don't like. You're skimming off the profits. So there's a lot of stuff like that I really really like. I think figuring out a tone of an adventure. Like one thing they talked about was like in the Bear Clan, one of the high up positions is the master chef.
Okay.
Because it's like the Bear Clan has this thing where like everybody wants to be the best. But not in a like, if I'm not the best, I'm gonna kill everybody. More like, oh, you beat me, so next time I'm gonna come. Well, the majority aren't like, if I'm not the best, I want to be the very best, the best that's ever lived. That you'll get murdered in your sleep. But anyway, there's this orc who's the master chef. And the other thing about this setting I love is orcs are not like the default bad guy race. Orcs are actually the race that everyone looks to because orcs are very, very, very hardy. Very, it's not a matter of like intelligence so much. It's just they're smart like everybody else is. So it's not one of the things where people are like, oh, orcs are dumb. And they don't have the gods that they have later on. That Groomsh and Corellian haven't fought their land grab fight yet. Corellian, Laurentian Corellian has not taken one of Groomsh's eyes, making him Groomsh one eye. So, the orcs don't have the whole like, well, you stole from us, so that's why we hate everyone. Okay. You stole our place in the world, so fuck you guys. We'll just take everything then. Which is something I really have always liked that people I don't think point out enough about the orcs. The orcs, the reason they're kind of bad guys is they feel legitimately wronged. And it makes everyone else kind of go, you guys are kind of, everyone else is kind of shitbags. So I like that idea. Like in this Pangea, like Groomsh could be a fucking guy. He just has not elevated himself to that like level.
Right.
He could just be a guy. Which I also find interesting if someone would be like, hey, I want to be Groomsh. I want my orc to be Groomsh. I think that'd be fucking fascinating. Anyway,
yeah,
I like the idea of that, like that, the dwarves still have rock growing out of them. They're not even fully like skin anymore, or yet. They're just rock people still, or that the elves are part dream. So they're not like fully formed into reality yet. Like if you play those races, like they're not like the same.
Interesting.
Now here's somebody who just wants to offer us help, Matt. So anyway, I think I'll figure that out. But I'm thinking like, so getting back to my point was like with this master chef, the one thing they talked about is like as a like an easy starter adventure, which I was like, that's very interesting. Is that the players just go out like to get ingredients? He just gives them an ingredient list, and that's like your whole adventure. It's like what you find on that. One thing they talked about too, which because again I haven't read the book yet, is there's an entire area where just everything's huge.
Oh.
So like elephants are like 5 times their normal size. Everything's gigantic, and it's kind of like their version of the American West.
Okay.
Which is kind of crazy. Yeah, it's very kind of it's just kind of. I was like, okay, I gotta read because they're like people like look at the map of Pangea and they're like, oh, it looks so small. I'm like, what you got to realize is this is all the continents smushed together. It's just that the volcano in the middle of the world where the dragons live inside of is like the size of 3 states, 3 of the biggest states smushed together. It's massive. So yeah, I really like that idea there. And the other thing that they use that also brings me back to Birthright is there's the lands of Nod. And Nod is basically their version of the Feywild and the Shadowfell. There's the twin lands of Nod. So they were like, because there's not like, hey, we're drawing teleportation circles all over the world. Like even when you get to a level where you can use teleport, it's going to be limited. But you can get to anywhere through Nod. But it's also going to be it's not like a just easy trip. So in Birthright, there are the Shadowlands, which are basically a very, very early version of the Shadowfell. Oh. But only halflings can walk you into the Shadowlands. So you need halflings to guide you. Because otherwise you can easily wander in and never wander out. Like they might show you like, oh, here's a way in. But if they don't show you the way out, you ain't getting out.
Right.
And it's full of horrific things. But also it's fast travel. So that's why it's the nether of these settings. But you also can't make paths, like permanent paths, because these lands shift and move. They just swallow it up.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I really like that idea a lot. And that they were talking about also like the more you can make the one thing I really like about these guys podcast, the guys who made the game, is one of the first things the guy who was the head designer said is like, every time you open the book at your table, it's your version of the setting. It's not our setting anymore. We just gave you we gave you the book and the crayons and everything, and you color it outside the lines or inside the lines as much as you want. So they were all talking about like their versions of Nod, and one was like, oh, I look at it as like, the Shadowlands, the Shadowfell basically being the land of nightmares. So everyone sees their own stuff. Like, so when you ask the players at the table, like, what do you see? It's because that's what's there. But you're supposed to tell them like, what is something nightmarish? Because that is what you're seeing. So yeah, he was like, they were talking about as opposed to like the Shadowfell and 5e or in earlier being like this pseudo negative energy plane, and the Feywild being like, life unbound, life with no rules. Everything wants to eat you. So anyway, I was playing Gia. You talk about it more. So do you remember a while back when I was like, hey, I want to run a D&D game where everybody makes each other? I said this before Die came out, so
I do remember that, I think, yes.
I want to do it in this Oz book I have, which makes the most sense to me now. That I have a book that's system agnostic for Oz, and I have one for, I think, for Neverland, maybe. As like settings. And Oz is like, it's based on the books and not the movie. So it's wild as fuck, and it's very political. And I like the idea of like doing a game where the players get dropped in Oz.
Okay.
Like modern people. I mean,
yeah,
there is a vibe of Die, because I think Die, it falls in the same category. But these books are also super nice. I don't have mine out, but they're like super pretty books with like gold inlay on the cover, so they're a little shiny and very nicely bound. And I can't remember who makes them, but there's like 3 of them, I want to say, and they're for different kind of like fantasy. I don't know what you would even call that, like old school fantasy properties, basically. But they're really beautiful. But I picked up 2 of them, and I've been chumming at the bit to do the Oz one. So what do you think about like that concept of everyone rolling up somebody else who's playing?
I think that's really interesting. Absolutely. And then, you've got to choose what to do with what you've been given, I like that.
make a somewhat idealized version. So one thing I would say too is I want people to roll each other up um, um, anonymously.
Oh, yeah, that's probably better.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Super Spike. Hey, whatever you're into, I just happen to be into rolling other people up.
Yeah, hit
Victor
him with
roll,
the
Mama Straw. Um,
boy.
so yeah, I want to start kind of thinking that through. That's another book I have to fucking read. But yeah, I think that might be very fun um, to do as like maybe a couple blocks of Extra Life.
Yeah.
You know, Oz is kind of a scary place, really.
Oh, absolutely.
It's kind of messed up when you start to go into it. You're like, oh no, oh no.
Yeah, no, there's some real weird, fucked up stuff going on.
Yeah, I kind of like that, you know, because if you've
Yeah.
ever read those books, or in my case, you know, I've read some of them, but I've never sit down and read all of them. Although I found a way to get a hold of them um, for my sister-in-law, so I was
Oh,
able. Part is because I worked at a um, comic book store in Duluth for a long time, and we also had vintage paperbacks, and we um, we had vintage paperbacks, and we had a game room, and I ran the game room, and it was like my second job, which wasn't really much of a job. It was a lot of like, here's the I put the link in the chat for the book I have. Um, it's it's more of like, I think they describe it, if I remember correctly, as like a urban hex crawl.
hmm.
Um, and I like that idea a lot. But I think if we were to do it for Extra Life, I'd need to have it. Have to. I don't think a crawl works for Extra
Mm,
Life unless you're like literally going to just run that the entire time. Um,
yeah.
which I like the idea of like multiple people running it, and like just because I also feel like that is very awesome. Is tone and tenor shift is fucking drastic. Um, so being all, I run 3 hours, and then like James runs 3 hours, which would be wildly different. But anyway, I think that could be very interesting. Um, this is done. I can't remember. That doesn't seem right, but I'll find out. I think it'll tell me if it's wrong. Maybe it is right. Huh. I might have spelled that right. That's terrifying. That is truly frightening. Um, so one of the other things I wanted to talk about was festivals for campaigns. We're not going to get to that today. But I feel like I feel like
Well, we can touch on it. I mean,
I just want to come up with festivals. So
okay.
one thing I really like is a couple other things I listen to and that I read. They're like Mike Shea talks about all the time. He's like, festivals are a very, very, very solid way of dropping plot hooks in a natural way. Also, just
Yeah.
putting in like contests, because again, like I was talking about the Bear Clan, they have festivals all the time. It's like drinking contests. They actually wrestle bears. They lift heavy shit. They one was like in my game. It's one of the things is they literally, like, one of the things in my game is there is also a contest for sexual prowess, gender not required. um so, and like in plain Gia has stuff like half oozes, like your character had an ooze ate you or implanted itself in you, like its offspring, you're no longer fully you. You're gooey and stretchy, and you have to eat all the time.
All
Like,
right.
but also you can do things like lay yourself flat enough to go under a door.
Oh,
Go
well,
through it. Their keyholes don't really exist because no one uses keys. But there's like stuff like that, or like starlings. You're a star that fell to the planet that is now manifest as a person.
interesting.
And you're kind of sad because you're no longer up in the sky dancing with your brothers and sisters.
Well, yeah, that would suck.
It's really like interesting, like takes on, like I said, that the elves are half dreams, and dwarves have not fully become dwarves. They're still partially rock. So you have like stones and minerals jutting out of your shoulders and stuff like that because you're not fully become a thing. There's dinosaur people, of course, because fuck yeah. All kinds, and they're like you can use any race, but you need to plan GA it up. So yeah, I like that idea a lot. I like having these alternative things you can kind of, I think it adds to a story. And I think like with the Extra Life game, with the Oz game, it's more like, how do we translate what you were in your everyday life into a class? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because one thing I really like they talked about, I swear it's the last thing, is they were talking about skill checks. And they were talking about like, well, it sucks because like barbarians have intimidate, but most people use charisma, which is the ability score, the base ability score for intimidate, as a dump stat. That's where they stick their low number. So when they're rolling intimidate, they're like usually having a hard time rolling it. One of the guys was like, I don't do it that way. Where I do it is, which is kind of the way I do things in Chaos Scar with the campfire rules, is you have to be able to justify using another stat, but you can. He's like, if I have somebody who's a barbarian who's like a half giant, who's like 8 foot tall and 800 pounds of fucking muscle, they're not going to intimidate you with words. They're just going to flex. So the player can say, hey, I want to use my strength as my intimidate. Then you say, okay, well, you have proficiency in intimidation. So you take that proficiency and you add it now to your strength modifier rather than your charisma modifier. And that's how you use it. And I'm like, that's really, really smart. Like he was talking about the way that he saw it used most interestingly is they were in their group, got separated, and one of the people got injured pretty badly. And the barbarian's like, I have medicine. I want to help. But they're also like, medicine's an int skill and your int is shitty. And they said, I want to use my strength to set the bone. And they were like, that's fascinating. Because his justification was like, the thief with us would not be strong enough to do that. I'm strong enough to do that. And they told him like straight out, hey, if you fuck this up, that bone is never going to be right without magical healing. And I was like, that's really, really, really interesting. Because like I'll do this thing with campfire rules in Chaos Scar. I haven't done it as much lately because I don't do it for areas they've been through a whole bunch. But like when they're traveling through new lands, I'll say, okay, because what I'll do is I'll put out like things they could find that are good and things they could run into that are not good. So I'll have them choose a skill. And it could be anything, but they have to tell me how they're using it. So like I'll have somebody who's used performance to just be loud and to like sing and play their instrument. And they're like, my idea is that I'm scaring away any animals. And I'm also just keeping everybody's mood up. And I'm like, that's a really good way of doing that. Like, that's interesting. But I usually make them go around 3 times, and I'm like, you can't use the same skill that you've already used, and you can't use a skill someone else has used the same way. So no one can just go, well, I'm going to also use my strength to
I'm going to do the
move
same
these
thing.
rocks, and I'm like, nope. So I really like when people take the rule of that and then go, okay, well, we're gonna, and because apparently that rule that they use is an actual optional rule in maybe in the player's handbook, or no, it's in the DMG, but they're like, no one uses it. Like, I've never heard anybody use that, and I'm like, well, fuck yeah, everyone should use that. That's a great rule.
Yeah,
so I
absolutely.
I like the idea of like using that in not just in playing GM, where, and I'm probably going to start implementing it everywhere. But especially for a game like this Oz game,
right?
Where you might be like, I don't know how to disarm trap. Like, I don't do that in my normal life, but instead going, but
here's what I do know that might be applicable.
I do type 300 or 200 words a minute, so my fingers are very nimble. So I would like to try to do this.
Yeah,
like a justification for your modern skills to work in a more of a fantasy setting.
Yeah.
Also, I think it has a very, and I'm sure Die realizes itself has the same vibe as the original D&D cartoon. You have normal ass kids who may or may not be dead. Spoiler alert. In a fantasy world. So yeah, that was my diatribe on that. So yeah, Matt, I'm getting you out of here almost on time. Where can people find you?
I'm here most Sundays. I'm on the Dave Wonder channel every other Tuesday, including this coming Tuesday, to do
what are you working on?
And stuff. I'm not sure yet. I just got some. I don't know. We'll see. Tomorrow we've got people coming over to work on the sewer drain. So that is kind of where all my mental
understandable
capacity is at right now.
I've been there.
It's not backed up or anything. It's more like they suggested it was done. We figured out a way to get it paid for, but it's like I don't know. They're gonna have to come in here with jackhammer or something, I assume, and
better now than later.
So it's just, oh yeah, no, I'll be glad when it's done, but until it's done, the communication from them hasn't been super great. So it's just
who'd you go with?
Well, we went with MSP, who we've had great service from in the past, but this is like a new division for them, and then they're kind of subcontracting this out. So it's been a thing. Hopefully it'll all be done tomorrow and I don't have to worry about it. But right now I don't even know when they're coming. So yeah. I managed to get a hold of the guy that I had originally talked to, and he's like, yep, you're set for tomorrow. It's like, okay. So that's where I'm at right now.
I don't know if you recommended, but someone recommended Gary the Sewer Rat to us, and that
Ron the Sewer Rat, yeah. And I don't know if they do lighting. Yeah, I don't know if they do lighting either. We've had them do, and they've cleaned our line a couple times, but yeah, this is to get lighting done.
Yeah, they gotta go in and resheath your line.
Yep, that's the plan.
It sucks. They'll tear your yard up, is what happens.
Oh no, they're doing the house.
Yeah, they did ours too. They had to, which sucked because they did it right before they tore the street up and redid this entire sewer system. 4 months before, they did it all in the yard.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, that's not there. They said they were doing it all from the house, from the basement.
They did some from the basement, but they did most of the tearing shit up was in the yard.
Yeah, they're not gonna. They're just gonna put a liner in it. So
yeah,
I think it's kind of
they went in. Well, they did remove some stuff because we had a bunch of roots that had fucked our.
Yeah, no, they're not saying they're gonna have to do anything outside. So
that's interesting. That's super cool. Hopefully it works out good for you.
Yeah, it's just it's like a plastic liner. So I don't know if they inflate it or something and then cure it or what. But
yeah, ours was like a multi like layer thing. It was like had the liner, but then they'd sheathe PVC over the top of that.
Yeah, no, this
They
is
were
just because
worried about like how aggressive our root systems had been.
yeah, ours aren't too bad. Our clay pipes are in decent shape. So this is just going to be like sending it through so that the roots don't come in through the gaps anymore.
Yeah.
And I guess they're going to use a robot to like trim it off on the city end or some shit. So I don't know. So I don't know.
Wow, you had to use robots. Yes, Matt.
Anyway, I just hope it goes smoothly.
They will.
And
They're
need
pros. It's not,
yeah, I know.
it's not the first time they're doing this.
I'm just, anytime there's, it's like if you're gonna have to freaking jackhammer out in my house, I get a little wary.
Yeah. No, understandable.
Especially since the sewer outline is directly next to the water in. It's like I don't like the idea of cracking around in here because that just seems like it's gonna be. But again, yes, they do know what they're doing. They're getting paid plenty for it, so.
I shouldn't cheat.
But yeah, so that's me. So yeah, I'll know more on Tuesday what I'm working on because my brain will hopefully have the capacity for it by then.
Nice. I know I sent pictures of this to you yesterday. I got Eternia up. It's so
Yes.
with no monorail yet, but we're gonna wait and do the monorail. Like on a day where we board game, we're gonna pull out the tables and put the whole thing together because Doug was like, "We have to put that fucking monorail on."
I have to.
Yeah, it's big. It overhangs the Matt Lynn Memorial Park shelf by about that far in the front.
Oh dang.
Yeah, it's real big. It's a large kitty cat head. I don't want to move my camera right now, otherwise I would show it to everybody. Maybe I'll do it the next
Yeah, so,
Tuesday. Also, like I felt really bad. I don't know if you can see this behind me over here. That like Doug and I both were like, oh man, it sucks. Like all the art on the boxes. You get a giant piece of art that is the cover.
oh.
And not like a cheap poster. It's like nice. It's even got that not lenticular, but that kind of shininess to it.
Yeah.
It's very, 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 very cool. So anyway, I'm not sure.
What do you got coming up?
Tomorrow, Star Wars, Scum and Villainy, because Nate's out of town doing an audit. So we get the Bad Boys of Rock twice in a row. I don't know where we're at with Spoop and Mang right now. Colin's got a bunch of stuff going on, so he's trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And I haven't had a chance to like figure that out with him.
Yeah, I mean, and if you get some extra time to yourself or whatever, that's nothing wrong with that either.
So I'm gonna talk to him about it, and hopefully figure that out at some point. It's just not been a priority right now for either of us. Apologies for that. And then I think we might try to do Fang Gang Friday because we didn't do it this last Friday because I had like a 3.5 day long headache that just sucked balls. Hence the reason me sleeping till 9:30 on a Sunday, which never happens. And also waking up at 9:30 or 9:29 and realizing it's way later than I normally sleep. Normally I'm up at like 6:30, 7 at the fucking latest. Anyway, I think that's what next week looks like. I don't know. Something like that. Yeah. And we didn't have Down Outlands this month because we had a couple folks who canceled that day because they had some significant things going on. So it's that time of year, so I apologize, but people get sick, people have family stuff pop up, so bear with us. We're just like I have a standing rule that real life trumps fake life. I should say real life more important than fake life, because I try not to use that other word anymore at all because it's linked now forever to a walking blob of excrement. But we'll be back next Sunday. Maybe I'll be awake at a decent time. I know Duke is gonna potentially come on soon to talk about this Birthright thing. And
Yeah.
possibly I'll get him to talk about his games he's got going on. I've heard rumor of other people want run game on channel, but no one come through. I don't know why I'm talking like this today. But no one's come through. I'm still looking for people. If you just want to build on my Minecraft realm, reach out to me, because that's what people are going to use for the actual life Minecraft game. I can only build so long because Minecraft now gives me motion sickness. Pretty significant.
Oh, no.
So yeah, which sucks because I've been building in there for a while, and now I'm like, I just can't. Maybe build for like an hour, and then I'm like, I gotta turn this off, or I'm gonna throw up.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it, baby. All right.
No.
That's prep school for today. I'm going to go get my grill fired up, and I should probably mow my
Hell
grill,
yeah.
but we'll see. Enjoy the rest of
office, mow a little bit of lawn and go for a walk or something. So
Ooh, beautiful. Enjoy the rest of your
enjoy
Sunday.
Spike.
And if you're listening to this in the future, hey, show up on a Sunday. Come hang out with us. We're actually pretty decent folks. All
Damn right. And we love to hear from you and your suggestions and ideas for what we're talking about on any given week. So
especially for this festivals thing I want to do. Festivals for the rest of us.